You wake up already a little hungry, as if the feeling never quite left you from yesterday. And in the dim gray light of early morning you can sense the quiet weight of another ordinary day beginning. The air around you cool and still, carrying the faint scent of damp wood and ashes that never fully fade. And as you slowly open your eyes you remember, without any urgency, that food will be simple again, just as it was the day before. And the day before that, and the day before that, a steady rhythm of eating not for pleasure, but for continuation, for keeping the body moving gently through long hours of work and rest. And as you sit up on the rough straw bedding you can feel a dull emptiness in your stomach, not sharp or painful, but familiar, almost expected, like a quiet companion that follows you from one morning to the next. And you know without thinking too much about it that breakfast will not be a grand meal. There will be no variety waiting for you, no surprising flavors. Only what remains, what can be spared, what has lasted through the night. And somewhere nearby you can imagine the presence of yesterday's bread, firm and slightly dry now, resting where it was left, unchanged, patient, and reliable in its own quiet way. And as you reach for it you do not rush, because there is no need to rush. Nothing about this moment demands urgency, and the world outside is still waking slowly. The soft light barely touching the edges of the wooden walls, and you bring the bread to your hands, feeling its texture, rough and dense, a reminder of the grain it came from. And when you take your first bite it is not about taste in the way you might imagine. It is about steadiness, about something solid and familiar filling the space within you. And the flavor is mild, almost muted, carrying just enough warmth to be noticed, and you chew slowly, not because you are savoring it in a modern sense, but because there is nothing else to focus on, no distractions, no urgency, only the quiet act of eating. And in this slow rhythm you begin to feel a small sense of comfort, not excitement, not satisfaction in a dramatic way, but a gentle easing of that early morning emptiness. And as you sit there in the stillness, holding the bread, taking one bite at a time, you understand that this is how the day begins, not with abundance, but with consistency, not with change, but with repetition. And there is something almost calming in knowing exactly what to expect, in knowing that the hunger will return later, just as it always does, and that you will meet it again in the same quiet, steady way, without resistance, without surprise, simply continuing, one slow moment into the next. The bread remains with you even after the first quiet bites, its presence steady in your hands as the morning light grows only slightly stronger, and you notice that it carries a memory of yesterday, a faint dryness that speaks of time passing slowly. And as you continue to eat you become aware that this is not a fresh beginning but a continuation, a gentle extension of what has already been. And the taste does not change from one bite to the next. It stays the same, soft in its dullness, familiar in its simplicity. And this sameness does not trouble you, because it is expected, because it is what each morning offers without question. And as you sit there you can feel the rhythm of your chewing settling into something almost automatic, a slow and even pace that matches the quiet stillness around you. And the air remains cool against your skin, carrying with it the faint scent of earth and smoke that never fully leaves this place. And somewhere beyond the walls you can sense the world beginning to move, though not in any hurried way, just a gradual shift, a soft beginning of sound that never quite interrupts the calm. And as you take another bite you notice how the bread fills your mouth without demanding attention. It is not rich, it is not layered with flavor, it simply exists, offering substance without distraction, and in that way it allows your thoughts to drift, not toward anything specific, but toward a gentle awareness of time passing, of one moment sliding into the next without resistance. And you realize that this food is not meant to surprise you. It is meant to remain constant, to provide just enough to carry you forward, and nothing more. And there is a quiet reassurance in that, a sense that nothing unexpected will interrupt this early hour. And as you continue eating you feel the slight easing of hunger, not a fullness, but a soft reduction, as if the edge of emptiness has been smoothed rather than removed. And you understand that this is enough, that it has always been enough. And as your hands hold the remaining piece you notice its weight, modest and unchanging, and you take another slow bite, allowing the texture to settle, allowing the act itself to continue without thought, and the light in the Room shifts just a little more, enough to reveal the worn surfaces around you, the simple shapes of objects that have been used day after day without change. And in this quiet setting you become aware that every part of this moment repeats itself across many mornings, across many days, and that the bread you eat today is not different from the bread you ate before, and will not be different from the bread you will eat again. And there is something deeply calming in that repetition, something that asks nothing of you except to continue, to take one bite, then another, to sit in stillness and allow the day to begin at its own slow pace. And as you finish the last of the bread, you do not feel a strong sense of completion, only a gentle transition, as if one small part of the day has quietly given way to the next, and the hunger has softened but not disappeared, remaining somewhere in the background, waiting patiently for its return later. And you sit for a moment longer in the quiet, your hands now empty, your breath slow and even, and the morning continues to unfold around you in the same steady way, without change, without urgency, carrying you forward into the rest of the day. After the last small traces of bread have faded from your mouth, you remain still for a quiet moment, not because there is anything left to finish, but because there is no clear line between eating and simply being. And as you sit there, you begin to notice how the feeling of hunger does not fully leave. It only softens and settles somewhere deeper, becoming less immediate, but never entirely gone. And this gentle presence stays with you as you shift your weight and slowly rise, the room around you, unchanged except for the slightly brighter light that now rests along the edges of wood and straw. And you sense that this sameness extends beyond the space you are in, that it stretches into the rest of the day, into every meal that will come. And as you begin to move through the quiet morning, you carry with you the understanding that what you eat will not change in any meaningful way, that the same ingredients will return again and again, shaped into slightly different forms, but never truly becoming something new. And this lack of variety does not surprise you. It does not interrupt your thoughts, because it has always been this way. And as you imagine the next meal, you can already picture it without effort, a simple mixture, a soft blend of whatever is available, something that fills the body without calling attention to itself. And you realize that the idea of choice is distant here, not absent, but limited, shaped by what the land offers, and what can be kept from one day to the next. And as you step into the slowly warming air, you notice that the world outside reflects this same steady pattern. Nothing rushes, nothing demands urgency. And in that stillness you begin to feel how your meals follow the same quiet rhythm as your surroundings, each one arriving in its own time, each one offering just enough to continue. And as you move forward, you can almost sense the presence of the next food before you see it. A pot that has been used many times before, resting in its place, waiting without change. And inside it you can imagine the beginnings of something slow and simple, something that will take time but not effort. And as you draw closer, you become aware of the faint warmth that lingers there, not strong, not inviting in a dramatic way, but steady and consistent. And you understand that this will be the center of what you eat, not only today, but on many days. And as you think about it, you do not separate one meal from another. They blend together in your memory, each one similar enough that they become part of a single continuous experience. And you find a quiet comfort in that blending, in the absence of sharp differences, in the way everything remains familiar. And as the morning continues, you notice how your body adjusts to this pattern, how it does not expect sudden fullness or strong flavors, how it settles into a slower pace of receiving what it needs. And in that adjustment, there is a calm acceptance, a sense that nothing needs to change for the day to continue. And as you move through these early hours, you carry the memory of the bread not as something distinct, but as part of a larger rhythm, one that will guide you through the next meal and the next. And you realize that eating here is not a separate event, but a quiet thread woven through the entire day, appearing gently and then fading, only to return again. And as you continue forward, you do not look for something different. You simply allow the pattern to unfold, knowing that it will remain steady, knowing that it will carry you from one moment to the next without interruption, without surprise, and with a quiet consistency that feels almost like rest. As the morning continues to unfold around you, you begin to notice a slow and steady warmth gathering from a place that has been used many times before, a simple pot resting in its familiar position, and you understand without needing to look closely that something inside it has already begun its quiet process, something that will take time rather than effort, something that does not need constant attention. And as you move a little closer, you become aware of the soft, almost gentle sound of liquid shifting within, not boiling with intensity, but moving slowly, as if it has all the time it needs, and the scent that rises from it is faint and earthy, not strong enough to draw your full attention, but enough to be noticed in the background. And as you stand there, you realize that this pot has been part of many days like this, holding similar mixtures, changing only slightly depending on what is available, yet always returning to the same simple purpose. And you can imagine what has been placed inside, perhaps grains softened by water, perhaps small pieces of vegetables that have been kept from previous days, all coming together in a slow and quiet blending that requires nothing more than patience. And as you observe this, you feel no urgency to hurry the process, because there is no expectation of sudden readiness, no moment when everything will transform dramatically. Instead, there is only this gradual change, this steady movement from one state to another. And as you watch the surface shift and settle, you begin to feel how this process mirrors the rhythm of the day itself, slow, consistent, and without interruption, and the warmth from the pot spreads gently into the surrounding air, softening the coolness that still lingers from earlier. And you can feel that warmth in a subtle way, not overwhelming, just enough to create a sense of comfort. And as you remain there, you notice how your thoughts become quieter, how the act of watching something so steady allows your mind to follow the same pace. And you do not think about the finished meal as something separate. You think about it as part of this ongoing process, something that is already happening rather than something that will suddenly appear. And the ingredients inside the pot do not stand out on their own. They blend together slowly, losing their individual shapes as they soften, becoming part of a single mixture that is more about consistency than variety. And you understand that when you eventually eat from this pot, you will not be tasting distinct flavors in a clear way. You will be experiencing something unified, something that has been brought together over time. And this understanding brings a quiet sense of familiarity, because it is something you have known before, something you will know again. And as the gentle movement within the pot continues, you can almost measure time by it, not in minutes or hours, but in the gradual thickening, the subtle change in texture, and the way the scent becomes slightly deeper, though never strong. And as you remain in this calm observation, you feel the earlier hunger still present in a distant way, softened but not gone, waiting for this next moment to arrive. And you do not rush toward it. You allow it to come at its own pace, just as everything else has, and the quiet space around you holds steady, the light now a little brighter, the air a little warmer, yet everything still moving in that same slow and even rhythm. And as you stand there with the soft sound of the pot and the faint warmth around you, you begin to feel how this simple process is enough, how it fills the space of the morning without needing anything more, and how it gently carries you forward into the next part of the day, without any sense of change, only continuation. As the gentle motion within the pot continues without interruption, you begin to notice how the scent grows only slightly richer, not in a way that changes its character, but in a way that deepens its presence, remaining soft and familiar. And you understand that what you will soon taste will not surprise you. It will not shift suddenly into something new. Instead, it will carry the same quiet simplicity that has already filled the morning. And as you remain near the warmth, you become aware of how little variation there is in what you eat, not just today, but across many days that have come before. And this absence of change settles into your awareness in a calm and steady way, not as a limitation, but as something expected, something that does not need to be questioned. And as you think about the flavors that will come from this slow mixture, you realize that they will blend together into a single gentle taste, one that does not stand out sharply, one that does not linger in a strong or memorable way, but instead rests lightly on your senses. And as you imagine bringing it to your mouth, you can already sense that it will feel warm and soft, filling space rather than creating contrast. And the idea of variety feels distant here, not something that belongs to this moment. And as you stand in the quiet, you begin to understand that each meal follows this same pattern, offering a steady and predictable experience that does not change from one day to the next. And in that steadiness, there is a kind of calm that allows you to move through the day without expectation, without the need for difference. And as the mixture inside the pot continues to thicken slowly, you can almost feel how it will settle in your body, not heavily, but gently, providing enough to continue without drawing attention to itself. And you realize that the purpose of this food is not to excite, but to sustain, to quietly support the rhythm of your day without interrupting it. And as you observe this, you notice how your thoughts remain slow and even, matching the pace of the cooking, and the light around you has grown just a little stronger, revealing the same simple surroundings that have been there all along, unchanged and steady. And in that consistency you feel a quiet sense of ease, as if nothing is out of place, as if everything is exactly as it should be, and the flavors you expect from the pot remain simple in your mind, soft grains, faint hints of whatever has been added, all blending into something that does not need to be described in detail because it is already known. And as you continue to wait without urgency, you notice how time seems to pass without sharp edges, without clear divisions, just a gentle movement forward. And the earlier hunger remains present in a softened way, waiting for this next moment to arrive. And you know that when it does, it will not be dramatic. It will not stand apart from what has already happened. It will simply continue the same quiet pattern. And as the warmth from the pot reaches you again, you feel a subtle comfort, not strong, but steady. And in that comfort you allow yourself to remain still, to observe without expectation, and to accept that what you are about to eat will be much like what you have already known, and that this sameness is not something to resist, but something to settle into, as the day continues in its calm and unchanging way. As the slow warmth from the pot continues to settle into the air, you begin to notice a quiet pause forming in the middle of the day, not a pause that interrupts anything, but one that simply exists between movements. And as you lower yourself into a more comfortable position nearby, you feel the weight of the morning ease slightly from your body, replaced by a calm stillness that does not demand attention. And the sounds around you remain soft and distant, blending into a gentle background that never rises or falls in any sudden way. And as you sit there, you become aware that this moment is not meant to be filled with activity. It is not a break in the modern sense, but rather a continuation of the same slow rhythm that has guided everything so far. And the pot beside you continues its quiet work, the surface shifting in a steady and predictable way, and you realize that this is how the middle of the day arrives, without announcement, without change, simply unfolding into place. And as you wait, you begin to feel the soft return of hunger, not sharp, not demanding, but present enough to be noticed. And it does not bring urgency with it. It does not rush you toward the food. Instead, it sits gently within you, as if it understands that everything will happen in its own time. And as you reach toward the pot, you feel the warmth rising from it more clearly now, a steady and even heat that carries no surprise. And you take a portion slowly, not because there is a need to be careful, but because there is no reason to move quickly. And as you bring it closer, you notice how the texture has changed from earlier, thicker now, more unified, the individual parts no longer distinct. And when you take your first taste, you find that it meets your expectations exactly, soft, warm, and simple. The flavor mild and consistent, offering no sharp edges, no sudden depth, just a quiet presence that fills the space within you. And as you continue to eat, you feel how each bite follows the same pattern, the same gentle warmth, the same steady texture. And there is a calming predictability in that repetition, a sense that nothing unexpected will interrupt this moment. And the act of eating becomes almost effortless, a slow and even motion that requires little thought. And as you sit there with the bowl in your hands, you notice how the world around you remains unchanged, the light steady, the air still, and everything continuing in that same quiet flow. And the meal does not stand apart from the day. It blends into it, becoming just another part of the ongoing rhythm. And as the food settles within you, the earlier hunger softens once more, not fully gone, but eased, as if it has been gently set aside for a while. And you do not seek fullness, you do not expect it. You simply accept what has been given. And as you take the final few bites, you notice that nothing about the experience shifts or builds. It remains even from beginning to end. And when the bowl is empty, you feel no strong sense of completion, only a quiet continuation, as if the moment of eating has simply folded back into the rest of the day, and you sit for a little while longer, allowing the warmth to settle, allowing your breath to remain slow and steady, and the world continues around you in the same calm and unchanging way, carrying you gently forward into the hours that follow without any need for transition or change. As the quiet middle of the day slowly gives way to the gentle stretch of afternoon, you begin to notice how the memory of what you have eaten lingers only faintly, not as a strong impression, but as a soft echo that fades without resistance. And the warmth that once filled your hands and your body settles into something less noticeable, something that simply becomes part of you without drawing attention. And as you move through the calm hours that follow, you find that the sense of fullness never becomes complete. It remains partial, leaving space for the quiet return of hunger that you know will come again. And this expectation does not bring concern. It does not interrupt your thoughts. It exists in the background as something familiar and steady. And as the light begins to shift ever so slightly, you become aware of how your meals are not separated by clear boundaries. They do not stand apart as distinct events. Instead, they blend into one another, forming a continuous pattern that repeats without change. And as you continue through the afternoon, you may recall, in a distant and almost gentle way, the rare occasions when something different appeared, something that did not follow the usual rhythm. And these memories do not come sharply. They do not stand out with vivid detail. Instead, they drift into your awareness like soft impressions, and you might remember a time when the taste was slightly richer, when the texture was just a little different, and even these small changes felt noticeable only because of how rare they were. And as you think about these moments, you realize that they belong more to memory than to expectation. They are not part of the day you are living now, and they do not alter the steady flow of what continues around you. And the absence of such variety does not feel like something missing. It feels like the natural state of things. And as you walk or stand or simply exist within this quiet afternoon, you can sense how your body remains adjusted to this pattern, how it does not anticipate sudden changes, how it moves through time with a calm acceptance of what is provided. And the idea of a richer meal becomes something distant, something that does not need to be considered. And as the hours pass in their slow and even way, you find that your thoughts remain just as steady, not drawn toward longing or comparison, but resting gently in the present moment. And the simplicity of what you eat becomes part of a larger simplicity that surrounds everything. And as the day continues, you feel how this pattern holds you in place, not in a restrictive way, but in a quiet and consistent way that asks nothing more than your presence. And as you continue forward, the memory of earlier meals fades further into the background, leaving only the soft awareness that they have happened and that they will happen again. And as the afternoon moves toward its later hours, you begin to sense the familiar return of that gentle emptiness, not strong, not urgent, but steady, and you recognize it without needing to think, knowing that it is part of the same pattern, part of the same rhythm that has carried you from morning into this moment. And as you feel it settle once more within you, you do not react, you do not rush, you simply allow it to be there, knowing that it will be met again in the same quiet and familiar way. As the day continues its calm and unchanging path forward, as the light of the afternoon begins to soften and stretch into longer shadows, you find yourself moving gently toward the quiet close of the day, and the familiar feeling of hunger returns once more, not suddenly, not sharply, but in the same steady and patient way it always does, settling into you like a quiet reminder that the rhythm continues. And as you approach the place where the final meal will be taken, you notice how the air has cooled slightly, how the warmth that filled the earlier hours has faded into something softer and more subdued, and the space around you feels dimmer now, the light no longer clear and direct, but filtered and gentle. And as you sit down, you can sense that this moment, like all the others, will follow the same pattern, offering no surprises, only continuation, and the food that is prepared for the evening does not differ greatly from what has come before. It carries the same simplicity, the same quiet blending of ingredients that have been used again and again, and as you hold it in your hands, you feel the warmth once more, though it seems softer now, less pronounced, as if the day itself is growing quieter. And when you begin to eat, you notice that the taste remains just as it has been, mild and steady, without strong variation, and each bite follows the same gentle rhythm, one after another, without interruption. And as you continue, you become aware of how the dimming light changes your experience, how the surroundings fade slightly into shadow, how the edges of things become less defined, and this softening of the world around you seems to match the quiet nature of the meal itself. And there is a sense that everything is slowing down, not stopping, but easing into a more restful pace. And as you eat, you do not focus on finishing, you do not measure how much remains. You simply continue until there is nothing left, and the act itself feels less like a task and more like a quiet part of the evening, something that happens naturally as the day comes to a close, and the earlier meals seem distant now, not in memory, but in feeling, as if they belong to another time that has already passed without leaving a strong impression, and the food before you does not attempt to stand apart. It blends into this final portion of the day, just as everything else has. And as you take the last few bites, you notice how the warmth settles gently within you, easing the hunger once again, without fully removing it, leaving behind that familiar sense of partial fullness that you have come to expect. And when you are finished, you remain seated for a moment, allowing the quiet to settle around you, the dim light, the still air, the absence of movement, and there is no clear ending to this moment. It simply fades into the next, just as the meal fades into the rest of the evening. And as you sit there, you feel how the entire day has moved in the same slow and even way, without sudden changes, without sharp contrasts. And the final meal does not mark a conclusion. It is simply another part of the same continuous pattern. And as the light continues to dim and the space around you grows quieter still, you allow yourself to remain in that calm, steady rhythm, carried gently forward into the quiet of the night. As the last traces of the evening settle into stillness, you remain for a quiet moment in the dim light, noticing how the warmth from the final meal has already begun to soften, fading gently into the background just as the day itself begins to fade, and the space around you grows darker in a slow and even way, not suddenly, not completely, but enough that the edges of things become less clear. And as you shift your body to rest, you become aware once again of that familiar feeling, a light and distant hunger that has not fully disappeared, only quieted, resting somewhere beneath the surface. And this feeling does not trouble you. It does not ask anything of you. It simply remains, just as it has at the end of many days. And as you settle into the place where you will sleep, you can feel how your body holds the memory of what you have eaten, not as something distinct, not as a strong sensation, but as a gentle presence that has already begun to fade, and the simplicity of the meals you have taken becomes part of a larger quiet pattern that continues even now. And as you lie still, you notice how the rhythm of the day does not truly end. It only softens, it slows, it becomes less visible, and the absence of strong flavors or full satisfaction does not leave a sharp impression. Instead, it allows your thoughts to remain calm and even, without distraction, without lingering intensity. And as you close your eyes, you can sense how the day has passed without interruption, each moment flowing into the next, each meal blending into the rhythm without standing apart. And the memory of the bread, the warm mixture from the pot, and the final quiet meal all drift together into something that feels continuous, without clear beginning or end. And as you rest, you feel the steady rise and fall of your breath, matching the slow and even pace that has guided everything from morning until now. And the gentle hunger that remains becomes part of that rhythm, not something separate, but something that moves with you, quiet and familiar. And the darkness around you grows deeper, though never complete, holding a soft presence that surrounds you without pressing in. And as your thoughts begin to slow, you realize that nothing from the day demands your attention anymore. There are no strong impressions, no sudden memories, only a calm awareness that everything has followed its steady course. And as you drift further into stillness, you can feel how the pattern will begin again, how the hunger will return in the same quiet way, how the same simple food will meet it, and how the rhythm will continue without change. And this understanding does not feel repetitive in a tiring way. It feels steady, predictable, and calm. And as your body settles more deeply into rest, you allow that steady rhythm to carry you, just as it has carried you through the day. And the faint memory of taste, the gentle warmth, and the quiet hunger all fade together into the background, leaving only a soft, and even sense of calm. And as you continue to drift, the day closes not with a clear ending, but with a quiet continuation into sleep, where everything slows even further, and the steady pattern remains, unchanged and gentle, waiting to begin again.